What if one of the most powerful tools for improving your energy, metabolism, focus, emotional resilience, and even longevity was something you've been ignoring your entire life? Not a supplement, not a medication, not even a specific diet, but your ability to actually listen to your body. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every second of every day, your organs are sending signals to your brain. Your gut is communicating with your nervous system. Your heart rhythm is influencing your emotional state. Your breathing patterns are shaping cortisol, inflammation, and even decision-making. And most people are completely disconnected from those signals. Modern life trains us to override the body. We ignore hunger cues. We suppress fatigue with caffeine. We scroll through stress instead of resolving it. We eat distracted. We breathe shallowly. We live almost entirely from the neck up. But the science is becoming very clear. The strength of your brain-body connection may determine far more about your health than people realize. Researchers now refer to this system as interoception, essentially your brain's ability to sense and interpret signals coming from inside the body. And emerging research shows that stronger interoceptive awareness is linked to better emotional regulation, improved metabolic control, lower anxiety, healthier eating behaviors, and more stable nervous system function. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine driving a car with all the dashboard sensors disconnected. You wouldn't know when the engine is overheating. You wouldn't know when fuel is low. You wouldn't notice a problem until smoke started coming out of the hood. That's how many people live inside their own bodies. They only notice signals once symptoms become loud. Burnout, brain fog, weight gain, anxiety, insomnia, inflammation, cravings, hormonal dysfunction. But the body was whispering long before it started screaming. And the people who age well, the people who maintain energy, metabolic flexibility, emotional stability, and cognitive sharpness, are often the people who learn how to detect those subtle signals early. In today's video, we're going to break down exactly how the brain-body connection works from a neuroscience and physiology perspective. We'll talk about the vagus nerve. We'll talk about breath and heart rate signaling. We'll talk about the gut-brain axis. We'll talk about why stress changes hunger and metabolism. And most importantly, we'll cover highly actionable protocols you can start using immediately to strengthen this connection naturally. Because when you improve communication between the brain and body, you don't just feel calmer. You improve the systems that regulate energy production, inflammation, recovery, appetite, sleep quality, focus, and long-term health. And that changes everything. Here's what's really going on inside your body when you feel stressed, burned out, or emotionally overwhelmed. Your body is not simply reacting psychologically. It's reacting biologically. The brain is constantly making predictions about whether you are safe, threatened, nourished, exhausted, socially connected, inflamed, dehydrated, or metabolically unstable. And it does this using signals coming from the body itself. This process involves a network of regions including the insular cortex, brainstem, hypothalamus, and autonomic nervous system. Together, these systems help regulate what scientists call allostasis, your body's ability to maintain stability through adaptation. But here's the problem. Modern stress is chronic, low-grade, and non-stop, and the nervous system was never designed for permanent activation. What the research shows is that chronic stress changes how accurately the brain interprets internal body signals. Over time, this can impair emotional regulation, increase anxiety sensitivity, disrupt appetite control, and alter inflammatory signaling. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine the nervous system like a smoke detector. A healthy smoke detector only activates when there's a real fire. But chronic stress makes the detector hypersensitive. Now burnt toast triggers the same alarm as an actual emergency. That's essentially what happens inside many people's nervous systems. The body starts overreacting to normal life demands, heart rate increases more easily, sleep becomes lighter, blood sugar becomes more unstable, cravings intensify, focus declines, digestion slows, and eventually the person says, "I don't feel like myself anymore," because physiologically they aren't functioning the same way anymore. One major reason this happens is cortisol dysregulation. Cortisol itself is not bad. In fact, healthy cortisol rhythms are essential for waking up in the morning, mobilizing energy, regulating immune function, and maintaining metabolic flexibility. The problem is chronic elevation. When cortisol remains elevated too frequently, the brain begins prioritizing short-term survival over long-term optimization. That shifts energy away from repair processes. The body becomes less insulin sensitive, sleep quality declines, inflammatory signaling increases, recovery slows, and the brain becomes more reactive to emotional stimuli. This is why prolonged stress often leads to both mental and physical symptoms simultaneously. Now, here's something extremely important. Many people try to solve this with motivation alone, but you cannot outmotivate a dysregulated nervous system. You have to regulate physiology directly. And this is where the brain-body connection becomes incredibly powerful. One of the fastest tools available is physiological sigh breathing, a pattern heavily discussed by Andrew Huberman because of its measurable effects on autonomic regulation. The protocol is simple. Take 2 quick inhales through the nose, then 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. That extended exhale helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system and improve carbon dioxide balance, which can rapidly reduce stress state physiology. Studies from Stanford researchers have shown that controlled cyclic breathing can significantly improve mood while reducing respiratory rate and physiological arousal. And importantly, this is not mindset work. It's physiology. You are mechanically changing nervous system output through breath control. Another protocol that strengthens the brain-body connection is what researchers call interoceptive training. This means intentionally noticing internal sensations without immediately reacting to them. For example, instead of immediately reaching for sugar when cravings appear, pause and ask, am I actually hungry? Or am I stressed, tired, overstimulated, or emotionally dysregulated? That pause alone strengthens communication between higher brain regions and autonomic circuits. And over time, people become dramatically better at distinguishing real biological needs from stress-driven impulses. This matters enormously for metabolic health, because many eating behaviors are actually nervous system behaviors first. Not discipline problems, not character flaws, nervous system patterns. Another powerful intervention is morning light exposure. Within 30-60 minutes of waking, getting natural sunlight into the eyes helps regulate cortisol timing, circadian rhythms, dopamine signaling, and melatonin release later at night. This creates stronger synchronization between the brain and body clocks. And when circadian rhythms improve, people often notice better energy stability, improved sleep depth, reduced evening cravings, better mood regulation, and improved cognitive performance. The key point here is this: the nervous system is always adapting to the signals you repeatedly give it. Every breath pattern, every sleep schedule, every stress response, every meal timing habit, every movement practice, all of it becomes training for the brain-body connection. So the goal is not perfection. The goal is teaching your nervous system that the environment is safe enough for repair, recovery, and optimized function. And when that happens, health starts improving from the inside out. One of the most overlooked aspects of health today is that your brain is not isolated from your body. It is embedded inside the body. And one of the most powerful examples of this is the gut-brain connection. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your digestive system is constantly communicating with your brain through hormones, immune signals, neurotransmitters, and something called the vagus nerve, the major communication highway between the brain and internal organs. In fact, roughly 80% of vagus nerve fibers travel from the body to the brain, not the other way around. That means your brain is continuously receiving updates from your gut about inflammation levels, nutrient availability, microbial activity, and metabolic status. So when your gut health deteriorates, your brain often feels it too. This is why digestive issues and mood disorders are so commonly linked. People with chronic bloating, insulin resistance, poor sleep, unstable blood sugar, or inflammatory gut conditions often report brain fog, anxiety, irritability, fatigue, or low motivation. And this is not imaginary. It's physiology. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your gut microbiome like a rainforest ecosystem. When the ecosystem is diverse and balanced, everything functions smoothly. Nutrients are processed efficiently. Inflammation stays controlled. Communication systems operate normally. But when the ecosystem becomes damaged through chronic stress, ultra-processed foods, poor sleep, alcohol excess, antibiotics, or constant blood sugar spikes, the system becomes unstable. Certain bacteria overgrow. Inflammation increases. Gut barrier integrity weakens. And stress signals begin reaching the brain more aggressively. Now, the important thing to understand is that the gut-brain relationship is bidirectional. Stress changes the gut, and the gut changes stress resilience. This is why people under chronic psychological stress often develop digestive symptoms. Elevated cortisol can reduce stomach acid production, impair digestion, slow gut motility, and alter microbial balance. At the same time, inflammatory compounds produced in the gut can influence neurotransmitter systems involved in mood, motivation, and cognition. What the research shows is that interoception, your awareness of internal bodily signals, is deeply connected to emotional regulation and stress resilience. Recent studies have linked impaired interoceptive processing with anxiety, depression, and heightened stress sensitivity. And one of the clearest ways to strengthen this system is by improving the quality of signals coming from the body itself. That means improving gut health, not chasing symptoms endlessly, improving the source. So let's make this practical. One of the fastest ways to improve gut-brain communication is stabilizing blood sugar. Because unstable glucose creates unstable physiology. Large spikes and crashes in blood sugar increase cortisol and adrenaline output. That often leads to irritability, cravings, fatigue, poor concentration, and emotional volatility. Many people interpret this as a psychological problem, but often it's metabolic instability. A simple protocol is building meals around protein, fiber, and healthy fats first. For example, eggs with avocado and vegetables, Greek yogurt with berries and chia seeds, salmon with olive oil and roasted vegetables, chicken with lentils and greens. These meals slow glucose absorption and create more stable energy signaling to the brain. Another powerful tool is reducing ultra-processed food exposure. Highly processed foods are engineered to override natural satiety mechanisms. They rapidly stimulate dopamine pathways while often lacking the fiber and nutrient density required for healthy microbiome diversity. In simple terms, they confuse the body's signaling systems, and over time, many people lose touch with genuine hunger and fullness cues. This weakens the brain-body connection dramatically. Now, another important intervention is eating without constant distraction. This sounds simple, but it matters physiologically. When people eat while scrolling, driving, watching television, or working, the nervous system often remains in a mild sympathetic state, meaning fight or flight dominance. Digestion works best in a parasympathetic state. Rest and digest physiology. So one practical protocol is this. For at least one meal per day, remove all screens. Slow the pace of eating. Chew thoroughly. Notice fullness signals. Notice energy changes after meals. This strengthens interoceptive awareness while improving digestion simultaneously. And over time, the body becomes easier to understand. You begin recognizing which foods support stable energy, which foods trigger inflammation, which habits improve recovery, and which behaviors quietly drain resilience. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day focused on metabolism, nervous system health, longevity, and practical science-backed tools you can actually use. Because real health is not about ignoring the body. It's about learning its language. And the gut is one of the loudest voices in that conversation. One of the most powerful and fastest ways to strengthen the brain-body connection is through deliberate control of breathing and movement. And what's fascinating is that these are two systems most people completely take for granted. Breathing happens automatically. Movement feels ordinary. But physiologically, these systems are acting like control knobs for your nervous system, metabolism, immune function, and emotional state. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every breathing pattern sends information to the brain about whether you are safe or threatened. Short, rapid, shallow breathing signals stress. Slow, controlled breathing signals safety and stability. And your brain responds accordingly. This is why breathing changes not only mental state, but also heart rate variability, blood pressure, inflammation signaling, and cortisol output. In other words, the body is constantly shaping the mind, not just the other way around. Now let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your nervous system like the suspension system on a car. If the suspension is overly rigid, every bump in the road feels overwhelming. If it's too loose, the car becomes unstable. A healthy nervous system needs flexibility, the ability to activate when necessary and recover quickly afterward. Breathwork and movement help train that flexibility. And the research on this has become incredibly compelling. Studies on slow breathing protocols show improvements in vagal tone, emotional regulation, stress resilience, and autonomic balance. Controlled breathing has also been shown to improve heart rate variability, one of the strongest markers of nervous system adaptability and recovery capacity. One especially effective protocol is something called resonance breathing. The basic idea is breathing slowly enough to synchronize breathing rhythms with cardiovascular rhythms. A practical version looks like this. Inhale through the nose for about 5 seconds. Exhale slowly for about 5 to 6 seconds. Repeat for 5 minutes. That's it. Simple, but physiologically very powerful. This type of breathing improves parasympathetic activation while reducing excessive sympathetic arousal. People often notice lower anxiety, clearer thinking, reduced muscle tension, better emotional regulation, improved sleep readiness. And importantly, this works because you're changing body signals first. Then the brain adjusts accordingly. Now, movement works in a very similar way. Most people think exercise is mainly about calories or aesthetics. But movement is fundamentally information for the brain. Your muscles are endocrine organs. Your joints provide sensory feedback. Your balance systems communicate with the cerebellum. Your cardiovascular system adapts to movement demands. And all of this updates the brain's understanding of your physical state. This is one reason sedentary behavior often worsens anxiety, fatigue, and brain fog. The brain receives fewer high-quality physiological signals. The system becomes understimulated yet paradoxically overstressed. Regular movement helps recalibrate this entire process. Now, this doesn't require extreme training. In fact, one of the best approaches for nervous system health is frequent moderate movement. Walking is a perfect example, especially outdoor walking, because now you're stacking multiple beneficial inputs simultaneously. Movement, visual expansion, sunlight exposure, circadian regulation, blood glucose utilization, and stress reduction. Research consistently shows that post-meal walking can significantly improve glucose control and insulin sensitivity. Even 10-minute walks after meals help muscles absorb circulating glucose more efficiently. This is incredibly important metabolically because stable glucose means stable energy delivery to the brain. And stable energy supports emotional regulation, cognitive function, and reduced cravings. Now, another overlooked tool for strengthening the brain-body connection is resistance training. When muscles contract under load, they release signaling molecules called myokines that influence inflammation, brain health, insulin sensitivity, and mitochondrial function. Resistance training also improves proprioception, your awareness of body position and control. This enhances the quality of sensory feedback traveling into the nervous system. And over time, people often feel more grounded physically and emotionally, not because of motivation, because their nervous system becomes more integrated. A very practical protocol looks like this: 3 to 4 resistance training sessions weekly, daily walking, ideally outdoors, short movement breaks every hour if working at a desk, and at least 1 intentional breathing session daily, even just 5 minutes. The key is consistency, because the nervous system learns through repetition. Every time you regulate breathing intentionally, every time you move instead of staying frozen under stress, every time you recover properly after exertion, you are teaching the brain that the body is capable, adaptable, and resilient. And that changes the baseline state of the entire system. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day focused on practical neuroscience, metabolic health, and evidence-based protocols to help you optimize energy, longevity, and performance naturally. Because ultimately, better health is not just about chemistry, it's about communication. And movement and breathing are 2 of the most direct ways to improve that communication every single day. One of the biggest misconceptions in health is that recovery happens passively. People think sleep, energy, emotional stability, and metabolic health are things the body automatically handles on its own. But the reality is this: your body is constantly adapting to the environment you repeatedly expose it to. And if the environment is chaotic, overstimulating, inflammatory, sleep-deprived, and stress-loaded, your nervous system adapts to survival instead of optimization. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your brain is running predictive models all day long. It's trying to answer one central question: is this organism safe enough to invest energy into repair, recovery, reproduction, focus, and long-term health? And the answer depends heavily on your daily behaviors. Not occasionally, repeatedly. This is why consistent routines are so powerful biologically. Your nervous system loves predictability. Circadian rhythms love consistency. Hormones love timing. Cells love rhythm. Modern life, unfortunately, disrupts nearly all of these systems. Artificial light late at night, erratic meal timing, sleep deprivation, constant stimulation, notifications, chronic stress, ultra-processed foods, lack of sunlight, minimal movement. The body experiences all of this as biological uncertainty, and uncertainty increases stress physiology. Now let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine trying to run a factory where deliveries arrive at random times, workers never know their schedule, power fluctuates constantly, and emergency alarms go off all day. Efficiency would collapse. That's exactly what happens metabolically when your circadian system becomes dysregulated. Hormones lose synchronization, insulin sensitivity declines. Cortisol rhythms flatten, sleep quality deteriorates, inflammation increases, and energy production becomes less efficient. One of the most important systems involved here is the circadian clock system. This includes the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain, essentially the master clock, along with peripheral clocks located throughout the liver, gut, muscles, pancreas, and adipose tissue. These clocks coordinate metabolism, hormone release, digestion, immune function, and mitochondrial activity. And what synchronizes them most strongly? Light, food timing, movement, temperature changes, sleep consistency. Research continues to show that circadian disruption is associated with increased risk of obesity, insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, mood disorders, and impaired cognitive function. So strengthening the brain-body connection often starts with strengthening circadian alignment. Now let's make this practical. The first protocol is morning sunlight exposure. Within ideally 30 minutes of waking, get outside for 5-15 minutes if it's bright, or longer if it's cloudy. This helps anchor cortisol rhythms early in the day while improving melatonin release later at night. People often notice better sleep quality within days of implementing this consistently. And importantly, sunlight exposure through windows is far less effective because much of the relevant light spectrum gets filtered. The second protocol is stabilizing sleep and wake times. The nervous system benefits enormously from regular timing. Even on weekends, keeping wake times relatively consistent helps reinforce circadian stability. Now, this doesn't mean perfection, but reducing variability matters. The third protocol is limiting bright artificial light at night, especially overhead lighting and excessive screen exposure, because blue-enriched light suppresses melatonin production and signals daytime to the brain. A practical strategy is dimming lights 1 to 2 hours before bed and avoiding extremely stimulating content late at night. The fourth protocol is meal timing. Late-night eating disrupts glucose regulation and circadian synchronization between the brain and metabolic organs. In many people, simply moving food intake earlier in the evening improves sleep, digestion, and morning energy significantly. And this is especially important for people struggling with weight loss resistance or poor metabolic flexibility, because metabolism is not only about what you eat, it's also about when. Another incredibly powerful habit is deliberate recovery. Most people schedule productivity, very few schedule recovery, but nervous system recovery requires intentional downshifting. That can include breathing protocols, walking outdoors, meditation, prayer, sauna use, cold exposure, journaling, social connection, laughter, silence. All of these help shift the autonomic nervous system toward parasympathetic dominance, the state associated with repair and restoration. And one especially overlooked factor is social safety. Humans are biologically social organisms. Supportive relationships regulate stress physiology directly. In fact, studies show that social connection influences inflammatory markers, cortisol regulation, cardiovascular health, and even mortality risk. Your nervous system literally changes depending on the people around you. That's how deeply interconnected the brain and body truly are. So when we talk about optimizing health, energy, focus, or longevity, we cannot isolate biology from lifestyle. The body is always responding to the environment, always adapting, always learning. And the more consistently you provide signals of safety, rhythm, nourishment, movement, and recovery, the more resilient your entire system becomes. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day focused on neuroscience, metabolism, recovery, and science-backed tools to help you optimize your health naturally. Because lasting health is not built through extremes. It's built through consistent signals that teach the body how to function well again. So when we step back and look at the bigger picture, one thing becomes very clear. Health is not just about calories, supplements, lab numbers, or willpower. It's about communication. The quality of communication between your brain and your body. And when that communication becomes weak, distorted, or chronically overwhelmed by stress, poor sleep, inflammation, unstable blood sugar, and overstimulation, the body begins losing its ability to regulate itself efficiently. That's when people start experiencing the symptoms so many struggle with today: brain fog, fatigue, weight gain, cravings, poor sleep, anxiety, low motivation, hormonal dysfunction, burnout. And often these problems don't appear overnight. They develop gradually as the nervous system becomes increasingly disconnected from the body's real needs. But the encouraging news is this: the brain-body connection is trainable, and small consistent behaviors can dramatically improve it over time. Today we talked about how chronic stress alters nervous system signaling and cortisol regulation. We talked about how breathing patterns directly influence autonomic physiology. We explored how the gut and brain communicate continuously through inflammatory, hormonal, and neural pathways. We discussed how movement acts as information for the nervous system, not just calorie burning. And we covered how circadian rhythms, sleep timing, light exposure, and recovery practices shape metabolic health and emotional resilience. These are not isolated systems. They are deeply interconnected, and that's the key idea I want you to take away from this video. The body works as an integrated network. When you improve sleep, you improve blood sugar regulation. When you stabilize blood sugar, you improve mood and focus. When you regulate breathing, you improve stress resilience. When you improve gut health, you improve brain function. When you move consistently, you improve inflammation, insulin sensitivity, mitochondrial health, and emotional regulation simultaneously. Everything is connected. And this is why root cause thinking matters so much. Because instead of constantly chasing symptoms, you begin improving the underlying systems that create health in the first place. Now, importantly, this does not require perfection. You do not need an extreme biohacking routine. You do not need to overhaul your life overnight. In fact, the nervous system responds best to sustainable consistency. Simple things done repeatedly. Morning sunlight, better sleep timing, more movement, more protein and fiber, slower breathing, less ultra-processed food, walking after meals, taking recovery seriously, listening to your body instead of constantly overriding it. These small signals accumulate, and over time, the body begins trusting the environment again. Inflammation decreases, energy improves, focus sharpens, sleep deepens, cravings stabilize. Mood becomes more resilient. And many people notice something else too. They start feeling connected to themselves again. Because ultimately, the brain-body connection is not just about performance. It's about awareness. Learning to recognize what your body has been trying to communicate all along. So here's my challenge for you. Choose just one protocol from this video today. Maybe it's 5 minutes of deliberate breathing. Maybe it's a walk after dinner. Maybe it's morning sunlight. Maybe it's eating one distraction-free meal. Start there. Then pay attention. Notice your energy, your mood, your cravings, your sleep, your focus, Because the body adapts remarkably fast when you begin giving it the right signals consistently. And that's where real long-term health starts. If this video added value, like the video and subscribe to join others optimizing their health naturally through science-backed tools and practical physiology. And as always, thank you for watching.